Hi, welcome everyone to Nikki Loves Books. I'm Nikki, and today we're going to be going over What the Hell Happened in the Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. So this book is the first 5 novellas of the Throne of Glass series. You do not need to read this book to still enjoy books 1 through 7 in the series. And I have already done a book review, and that is linked below. So if you're interested in, please watch it. If not, we'll go ahead and start with this recap. As it is a recap, please know spoiler warnings, like huge, big ones. I'm going to be spoiling the whole book. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. So like I said, this is the first 5 novellas. So the first one is The Assassin and the Pirate Lord. So it would be Throne of Glass book number 0.1. Alright, so to give you some background on the Throne of Glass series, it is a fantasy series that takes place in the fictional land of Aurelia, and it follows the character Selena Sardathian, who, as we first get introduced to her in the Assassin's Blade, is an assassin. Hence, all the novella names are usually the assassin and. So it focuses on her. She is the main character throughout the series. So when we meet Selena Sardathian, she is known as Arlen's assassin. So she does have a reputation of being a very good assassin, very ruthless, very capable. And she is the prodigy and heir to Ben Hamel, who is the king of assassins. So he is in charge of the Assassin's Guild in Arland. So Selena is paying back her debt to the guild because they did raise her. And then the other character that we need to know is Sam Cortland. So Sam is another child who was raised by the guild, so he is also working to pay off his debt to the Guild of Assassins. And Sam and Selena are rivals, and they definitely tend to have issues with each other. We'll get updates on that later, but just know at the very beginning, they're really kind of frenemies. They, I shouldn't even say frenemies. They're full-on enemies at this point. Selena hates Sam's guts, and as far as the reader knows, Sam is also not a fan of Selena. And they're roughly about the same age. They grew up together, and there's a strong rivalry, and Selena obviously thinks she's one up Sam because she is the prodigy, she is the heir, and they're constantly pushing each other's buttons, you know, like, oh, can I sleep tonight, or are you going to try to kill me? You know, so they really are at each other's throats. Selena definitely eggs on Sam more. So that is an important dynamic to know about. In The Assassin and the Pirate Lord, Sam and Selena were assigned to the same mission, which they both hate being together, and their mission is to go to the Dead Islands to meet with the Pirate Lord of Aurelia, known as Captain Rolfe. So Selena and Sam arrive to the Dead Islands, they meet with Captain Rolfe, and they have actually no idea what exactly they're doing there other than meeting Captain Rolfe and handing him a letter written from Arobin to the captain. Once they're in that meeting, Selena and Sam do find out that the letter contains a trade agreement between Arobin and Captain Rolfe that is involving trading slaves. And so Selena is really kind of ticked off about it. Sam, we don't see, has too much of an opinion other than, you know, you got to do what you're told to do by the guild master. So they find out that there's a slave trade going on. So after playing cool, even though they found out about the slave trade, Selena and Sam, after viewing the slaves, seeing the conditions, and really kind of letting it settle in that this is real, this is not like, oh, it's a slave trade. No, it's like legit slave trade. It does get Selena to kind of step out of line, and she and Sam team up to free the slaves. So thankfully, Selena and Sam do get to free the slaves, and even better, they actually get Captain Rolfe to sign 2 letters, of course, by threatening his life and holding him by knife point. But they get him to sign 2 letters. One of them is a letter to Arabin, the leader of the Assassins Guild, saying that the deal is off, so the slave trade agreement is off, and that Captain Rolfe will attack Arabin with his whole armada if he finds out Arabin is in any similar agreements involving slaves. The second letter is a statement saying that Captain Rolfe will never ever sell a slave again, and nor will he allow other pirates to sell, transport, or trade slaves in the future. So by the end of the Assassins and the Pirate Lord, after freeing the slaves, getting Captain Rolfe to ensure that Arobin won't get involved with the slave trade in the future, and also ensuring that Captain Rolfe won't be getting into the slave trade at all either, Sam and Selena do end up finally becoming frenemies. So there's definitely still that rivalry there, but there's also some respect and friendship as well. So novella number 2 in the Assassin's Blade is The Assassin and the Healer. So that would be Throne of Glass book 0.2. And The Assassin and the Healer follows Selena's journey almost immediately after The Assassin and the Pirate Lord takes place, with a little bit of a gap that they do explain. So Selena is actually in this backwater town called Inish on her way to the Red Desert. And this is for punishment for what happened in The Assassin and the Pirate Lord. So Arobin's response to Selena messing up the slave trade that Arobin had with Captain Rolfe is he does beat the shit out of her. And then she is basically ostracized to the Red Desert to train with the Silent Assassins for an extended period of time. In The Assassin and the Healer, Selena is staying at this really dodgy tavern, and she does meet another character that we see later on in the series named Yaren Towers. And Yaren is actually currently working at this tavern, pretty much against her will, but because she has to. So Yaren's mother was burned for using magic, and Yaren was raised by other family members and took off to be able to go to Torre Sesme, which is the academy for healers and physicians. And so that was Yaren's dream, was to make it to the Torre Sesme, become a healer like her mother was. And unfortunately on their way there, she ran out of money and therefore took a job up at this tavern in Inish, hoping that she would save enough money to continue her journey to fulfill her dream. But unfortunately, you know, she's not making good money, and the owner of the tavern is taking a pretty hefty fine, so she hasn't been able to get out. She is continuously harassed at work because she is a pretty good-looking girl, as you can see. And there's, you know, constantly trouble, fights at the bar and stuff like that. Selena does witness some of this interaction with these men behaving not nicely towards Yaren, and Selena does step in because they see, you know, Selena as a very beautiful girl too, and so they pick on her, and she of course kicks their ass, being the assassin that she is. So Selena does show Yaren a few pointers, and Selena does find out Yaren's backstory, what Yaren is doing there. And upon leaving the tavern, Selena does leave gold for Yaren along with a note. You know, basically saying we need more healers in the world, so please go do what you dreamed about. So the last we see of Yaren at this point is she's leaving the tavern with every intention to not go back. And so as readers, we can only hope that's true. Hey everyone, before we continue on with the next novella, I do want to remind everyone that please subscribe. You know where that button is, just go on and hit it for me. So The Assassin and the Desert is the third novella in the Assassin's Blade book, and so that would be Throne of Glass book 0.3. And in this book, Selena does make it to the Red Desert. So if you remember, this is her punishment from Arobin for wrecking his agreement between himself and Captain Rolfe to do a slave trade. So Selena does meet the Silent Assassins, and they are led by who they call the Mute Master. And so Silent Assassins, a lot of them do take oaths of silence. It is very much a group of assassins that are inspired by what we would call the what we would identify as the Eastern culture. So there's definitely a commonality and working together, versus the individualistic, like, let me beat you down, dog eat dog kind of mentality. So it is really interesting to see that dynamic. And so Selena goes to the Silent Assassins. Arobin asks that Selena get a letter of approval from the Master before she can return to the Guild of Assassins in Ardalan. So Selena goes there. The Silent Assassins, specifically the Master, does agree to these terms, and Selena starts training with them and living with them in the Red Desert, and she does end up with a roommate named Ansel. And Ansel and Selena are very similar in the sense that they are very arrogant, and they have a mission. They have something that they want to achieve, and with a lot of that's recognition. Ansel does wear full armor in this desert simply because she wants to stand out and wants to be known and recognized. So both Ansel and Selena do like to be distinguished. So sadly, we find out Ansel had a father and sister who were both killed by a lord in their area who basically conquered their lands. And so this is why Ansel is at the Silent Assassins, is that her mission is to become the best of the best, to therefore go fight that lord, kill him, and take her lands back. We do find out that the Master has been repeatedly refusing to train her, though. And, at this point, the reader is not quite sure why. Ansel and Selena are sent on a mission at some point together to negotiate with a local lord in Exandria who is trying to kill the Silent Assassins. He is hoping to get back into the good graces of the King of Ardalan, and so he is trying to take out the Silent Assassins, and specifically the Master. So Ansel and Selena are sent by the Master to basically try to reach a negotiation with this lord and try to stop these attacks. It doesn't go exactly as planned. Selena and Ansel do end up stealing two of his prized horses, and they then have to pay the repercussions for that with the Master by, shoveling horse poo. So regardless of the antics that Ansel and Selena get into, Selena does actually get trained by the Master after this point. After some training with the Master, Ansel does actually end up poisoning Selena, but not to death, but to put her in a deep sleep. Selena then wakes up in the middle of the desert with a note explaining that the Master was done with Selena and they thought this would be easier and she should just go home. There's a letter of approval from the Master in her pack. Good riddance. Get out of here. Unfortunately, it's not true. So, Selena does realize that the Silent Assassins are under attack, and specifically that Ansel is involved and is actually a double agent and actually helping that lord who wants to take out the Silent Assassins. So Selena puts that together. Ansel was trying to save Selena from getting involved with this fight, but specifically to keep her out of danger. So that friendship between Selena and Ansel is not fake. It is not something that Ansel did specifically for cunning, for backstabbing. It was a true friendship, and Ansel was trying her hardest to keep Selena protected. Thankfully, Selena, with her morals, she, wasn't about to allow people who've become her friends be hurt. And then on top of that, Selena doesn't actually have a letter of approval from the Master and therefore cannot return to the Guild of Assassins in Ardalan. So Selena does go back to the Silent Assassins. She is able to stop the attack and actually keep Ansel from killing the Master. Unfortunately, it does seem like Ansel did kill a few of the Silent Assassins, including her boyfriend, which is really kind of messed up. But, she was kept from killing the Master by Selena, and Selena then gives Ansel 20 minutes to run, but then actually ends up giving her 21 minutes, thus sparing Ansel's life. So Selena did show mercy on Ansel, and they remained friends, but distant and definitely not really on speaking terms. So Ansel kind of rides off into the sunset, and Selena makes sure the Silent Assassins are okay. So not only did Selena get a letter of approval from the Master, he also gave her chests of gold, therefore ending her servitude to Arobin and the Guild of Assassins. He basically allows Selena to have enough wealth to pay off all her debt and still have money left over, so she can actually make decisions according to what she wants and not necessarily according to her debts that she, of course, didn't even choose to. She was an orphan when Arobin took her in, and he's the one who added the tally. The fourth novella in the Assassin's Blade is The Assassin and the Underworld. So that would be Throne of Glass, book 0.4. So this is happening once Selena returns to the Guild of Assassins from the Red Desert. So she went from the Silent Assassins back to the Guild of Assassins in Ardaland. And when she gets there, Arobin is completely remorseful, showering her with gifts. So if you guys know the cycle of abuse, this is basically what he's doing. So he berates her, beats her, all that jazz, and then he then begs for forgiveness by showering her with lots of attention, lots of gifts, jewelry, and then even a new suit for her to use as Ardaland's assassin, and the suit is pretty cool. So Arobin is trying to get back in her good graces. He does give her a job that is specifically what she is told is stopping someone else from being involved with the slave trade. So again, this is him trying to say, hey, sorry I beat you to a pulp. Here's some gifts, please forgive me. And hey, you know how I beat you because you messed up my trade agreement for slaves? Well, here's your chance to stop someone else from being involved with the slave trade. See, I'm getting on your side. So he's really trying to do basically in alignment, trying to say, like, I have the same values as you. I can't believe I would have thought, but to be involved with the slave trade. So here's your chance to stop someone else doing it. So Arobin is being very manipulative. And in The Assassin and the Underworld, we're also introduced to the character Lysandra. Lysandra is a beautiful upcoming courtesan, and there is definitely a problem between Selena and Lysandra in the sense of they are vying not for just Arobin's attention, but also Sam's. So remember, Sam and Selena are kind of frenemies at the end of The Assassin and the Pirate Lord, but now that they're reunited, they're kind of iffy. Lysandra doesn't help the situation, and then of course Arobin doesn't help because Sam thinks that Selena is just easily forgiving Arobin and pushing everything under the rug. We do find out that Sam's price for him to forgive Arobin was Arobin's agreement and oath that he would never touch Selena again. So we do have that little kind of kernel of, wow, maybe Sam does not hate Selena like she believes he does. So there is that. The other kind of cuteness to this tale between Selena and Sam is that Selena and Sam do attend a concert with Arobin and Lysandra, and Selena has a very emotional reaction to the music and is just so touched and actually crying with happiness because of it. And Sam goes out of his way to find the sheet music so that Selena can play it, because she does play the piano. So that was another sweet gesture on Sam's part. So again, we're seeing these kernels of maybe Selena misinterpreted Sam's attitude towards her, his feelings towards her. Selena does end up starting her job to deal with the other people who are supposedly involved with the slave trade. That's what Arobin told Selena this job was. And she does actually get captured and put in the sewers to drown, and Sam saves her, but just barely. So she was nearly killed in the Assassin in the Underworld. She then goes off to pay her debt to Arobin. So she brings in all the gold that she received from the master, from the Silent Assassins, pays off her debt, continues doing that job that she almost died doing simply because she needs the money now that she's no longer in debt and she's got to make an income. So while doing this job, Sam does confess his love for Selena, and Selena reveals her feelings as well. So she finds out Sam was in love with her for years. She doesn't quite know how long she's had feelings for him. Of course, love and hate are very similar emotions, so she always thought she hated him, but there could have been an element of affection and love behind it, and maybe due to fear, or just simply because she was trying to be the best and he was in the same guild, maybe it just turned into hate instead of love. But Sam did love her for years, which is absolutely adorable, and I am a complete sucker for any sort of romance love story, so I'm totally on board with this. Then, after the confessions and the kissing and all that jazz, Selena does return to Arobin and paid off Sam's debt as well. So Selena and Sam are no longer in debt to Arobin and are completely free to do as they want, take the jobs that they want, and obviously any payment would go directly towards them and not towards their debt. So they do have to find ways to, of course, make sure that they are able to afford what they need to live. Selena does find out that Arobin took the money she paid him and spent it on Lysandra. So Lysandra had her bidding, which was basically, Courtesan's first encounter, and her virginity was given up, and Arobin took the money Selena paid him and paid for Lysandra's bidding. And so Selena was very upset about this. Basically, her hard-earned debt money was spent on a human being that she does not care for and actually really kind of hates. And by all means, I think there's definitely a jealousy factor between those two. So that's kind of where it ends, with Selena, finding out about Arobin buying Lysandra with her money that she paid. And so Selena just tells Arobin, I'm moving out, I'm done, and I'll be around, I'll take the jobs that I want to, but peace out, I'm not your bitch anymore, basically. So that is where The Assassin and the Underworld ends. Alright, so the last novella in the Assassin's Blade book is The Assassin and the Empire. So this would be Throne of Glass book 0.5. And this one's a hard read. I'm not gonna lie, this one is necessary for, of course, the rest of the series to actually happen and really change Selena into more cold, more prickly, more, stay away from me because I don't want to get hurt. So this novella is absolutely, tells the story of, what brought Selena to where she's at in book 1 of Throne of Glass. but it is probably the most painful of the novellas to read, simply because there is a lot of loss. This novella does open up with Selena being in a wagon, chained, and on her way to an encampment. And of course the reader is like, what the heck, I have no idea what happened. So then it does go into then 11 days earlier. So 11 days earlier to when we see Selena in the wagon, locked up and chained, we see Sam fighting in the vault. So just imagine a really dreary, rundown, rowdy bar with a fighting pit, and that's the vault. And Sam is fighting in the vaults currently because him and Selena need money. So after they paid off their debt to Arabin, which means that they no longer are in debt to him, but they're still part of the Guild of Assassins, they haven't been getting any jobs. And of course, that's because of Arabin. And he's keeping them from getting jobs. Selena and Sam are now living on their own, so they're having to pay for their rent, their food, anything that they need to survive, basically. And so they need an income. So Sam is fighting in the vaults. Selena is really not a fan of this because there's a lot of risk involved, which their job as assassins are risk involved, but the fighting pits are notorious of people dying in there from fighting dirty, using weapons what they shouldn't be. So Selena and Sam talk about leaving Riftfold and starting somewhere else. So Selena does go to Arabin, the king of the Guild of Assassins, and pays him a very, very hefty sum for her and Sam to be able to leave the Guild of Assassins with Arabin's blessing. And Arabin says, yeah, sure, my pleasure. I hope you guys have a good life, I'll take that money. So Selena and Sam are planning to leave. They do take one last job that will give them some more money to make sure that they can set up somewhere else. The job is, of course, like any other jobs, risky, and it does involve taking out a terrible human being who's pretty much a monster. And the night that Sam is doing part of the mission, he does not come back home on time. And Selena, of course, is frantic. She goes out and searches for him. She can't find him. So she returns to their apartment to find Arabin, sitting there looking very distraught and sullen. And so Selena does know the worst has happened. So Selena's worst fear were realized. She does end up going back to the Guild of Assassins, where they have Sam's body, and Sam was tortured pretty badly to the point where they describe his face as being in ruins. So she had to experience the death of the man she loved, and she goes back to staying in her room at the guild just because she is so distraught, and Arabin wants to keep an eye on her. She does overhear some of the guild members talking about going after the monster responsible for what happened to Sam, knowing that she wouldn't be allowed to go with them because, she's being emotional, she's not thinking clearly, yada, yada, yada. So she sneaks out, and one of the other guild members tries to stop her and is trying to tell her something, and she's just like, yeah, okay, fuck off, I need to go do this. So she goes to kill the man responsible for Sam's death, and it ends up being a trap. So Sam's mission ended up being a trap, and this mission to kill him in response to that ends up being a trap. So she ends up being captured and placed before basically the king of Ardalan, and she is sentenced to, being in an encampment where everyone dies. There's no way getting around it. It's basically a slave encampment. They call it a prison, but a lot of people's charges for being there are bullshit. So she is sentenced to this prison where you know, you work until you fall over and die, and a lot of people die pretty quickly there. So she's sentenced to this, and the reader is left with a scene that shows that Arobin had planned this whole entire thing. So he orchestrated this job. So he orchestrated the whole entire thing, had Sam killed, and then had Selena not killed because, you know, he does, I almost, you know, I want to say love, but I don't even know if I can say that for Arobin. He's a piece of shit. You know, he did raise Selena, so there is this parental figure, this father figure there, and so it almost feels incestuous at the very least. It's a very pedophile-like, simply because he has liked her and been attracted to her, and we don't quite know for how long. You know, the same thing could be said for Lysandra. Lysandra was a courtesan in training, and he's known her since she was a child and helped fund her, get her trained, make sure she had the best training for a courtesan. And again, so there's this pedophilia type aspect. So Arobin orchestrated Selena's capture, but of course, you know, he did not want her to die because he has weird, you know, what he thinks is love, I don't even know. So he has an affectionate feeling for her, or what he considers affectionate. You know, and as I mentioned earlier, he is abusive, so it could be the abusive version of love. And so he orchestrated Selena's capture, but not death. So at the end scene, we the readers get to see something that Selena, you know, has no privy to, and it's the Arobin's criminal partner who asks Arobin, you know, why did you do it? And Arobin responds, because I don't like sharing my belongings. So again, this really solidifies this relationship that Arobin is abusive. He sees Selena as an object, as something that he owns, and not a full functioning person. He has no respect for her. She is just simply means to an end for him, a trophy in a lot of ways, and he won't stand for her leaving him, and he will definitely not stand for another man to be involved with her. And then, of course, the very end of The Assassin and the Empire is Selena being put into this work camp, salt mines of Endeavor, and she repeats this mantra, I am Selena Sardathian, and I will not be afraid. And it is there that she vows to one day find and take care of the people who did this to her and to Sam. And so that is the ending of The Assassin's Blade. Again, you do not have to read these novellas to understand what happens in books 1 through 7. It is a chance to kind of see these events in more detail. They are, you know, briefly mentioned in the main books 1 through 7, but the novellas really kind of give it the meat, the feeling behind it, the emotion behind it. I cannot ever read The Assassin and the Empire without fucking crying. Not gonna lie. Sarah J. Maas is really good at conveying feelings and the anguish that and rage Selena ends up feeling after the death of Sam, which of course. So that's The Assassin's Blade in a nutshell. So thanks everyone for being here. Again, Nikki Loves Books. Please join me next time. We will be doing a review for the Throne of Glass book number 1, which is Throne of Glass, and then of course I will be doing a what the hell happened in Throne of Glass, so a recap book. Remember to subscribe, like, comment if you felt that this review was good, if you wanted me to do something different, if you liked the photos I used for the characters. Let me know. All right, thanks.